Hello and welcome back to Heart of the Cast, a weekly Yu-Gi-Oh! Centric podcast featuring the tuber, me, Farfa, and Mr. Schmidt, the world
Hello.
champion. Hello, Josh. Let's do some quick little housekeeping. Thank you so much, everyone, for the support, the listens, the views, etc. from the first episodes. It's been overwhelmingly positive, so we're trying to create something special for the community here, and everyone seems excited for that. I have read through every single comment. The couple of feedback points are going to take like an episode or two to implement.
Yeah.
But with immediate effect, weirdly enough, people actually wanted longer episodes. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do 1 hour 30
Yep.
instead of 1 hour and see how that goes. And Apple Podcast is coming, but Josh is lazy.
Look, no, I'm not, but it's coming. Like this
Yeah.
episode, I'm planning to have this episode up on Apple Podcasts. So if you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts, you know I've not been lazy. If you're not listening to it on Apple Podcast, I might have been lazy in the future.
Sure, we believe him. All right. As for the mic quality, I think it should be fixed now, but let me know. In terms of webcam quality, I don't know what's going on with webcam. If you want to see me in HD, check out my OnlyFans or something instead. I don't know.
Audio listeners very confused right now.
Anything you want to say before we jump through this itinerary?
No, I've been happy reading the feedback to the first episode. We're gonna try and implement it, and we're just gonna keep running and see how it goes from now on. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. I'm glad that everyone has been enjoying it, honestly. So this has been really exciting. And let's get through today's episode, which is episode 2, on the deep dive of Master Duel to commemorate, or rather analyze and look at the 2-year anniversary. This game has been around for 2 years now. Could you believe it? 2 whole years we've had Master Duel.
Doesn't feel that long, does it?
Not at all. Not even a
Yeah.
little bit. Feels like just yesterday I was loading up the game and crafting Dante as my first ultra rare.
Was that your first Master Duel deck?
You know what's really... I don't remember. I think it was. Yeah, but you know what my first pull was? My first holo, like super and above. Genuinely, not like... It's actually crazy, but my first holo was Farfa.
My first royal was Farfa.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay. Sick.
Yeah.
All right. Well, client just gave you good cards. Makes sense. Today's breakdown, I suppose, we're going to go looking at the release of Master Duel, that sort of experience, the popularity, the expectations leading up to Master Duel as well. We're going to talk about the new player experience on Master Duel, which was interesting. The different game modes, how you obtain cards. We're going to look at the separate cards pool and ban list situation as well that Master Duel still is incorporating. And we might do a little bit of a deep dive into the competitive... Well, we will be talking about the competitive aspect of Master Duel, but might not go too deep into, for example, like the Duelist Cup of the World Championship, because those are potentially full topics and podcasts just by themselves.
Yeah, this episode is just meant to be like a kind of like 2 years in retrospective. You know, what's good about Master Duel, what's bad about Master Duel, what did we expect from it, what did it actually deliver, maybe what did it not deliver, what are we expecting from it maybe moving forward, and what should we maybe stop expecting from it because it's clearly not going to happen.
Yep, exactly. So let's jump through the first section. Let's talk about Let's talk about the prelude, first of all. So we knew Master Duel was in the works and we knew it was coming. There was a bunch of Japanese originating articles talking about how they had this vision for the game as an esport, as a fully fledged competitive experience of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like they specifically use that term esport. And well, when you use a word like that, that sets up expectations, let me tell you.
There was one other thing that did set expectations for me personally, and I know a lot of other people had the same expectation, which was, I believe it was one of the first trailers that specifically announced it as a way to play the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG and OCG, right? That was the wording that they used, which we're going to talk about separate card pool later, but that is something that I feel like we haven't gotten because we're playing a game with the exact same rules pretty much. Well, it's best of one, but we're playing the same game essentially, but not quite exactly TCG and OCG, right? Which is one of the bigger gripes that I had with it earlier on. I've made my peace with it at this point, but it is definitely one thing to note that is something that I personally expected and didn't quite get, right?
Yeah, I think the technical aspect there is a way to play OCG and TCG. Well, technically that's true. You can play with some TCG cards.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same game. It's just different card pool ban list and all that kind of stuff, which we're going to talk about as well. But yeah, that is like the one thing I would have loved for it to be, was a way to play to test for IRL Yu-Gi-Oh, which is sadly not possible, right?
I think one of the major points of discussion we had in the lead up to Master Duel was the expectation of the obtaining cards, and that was something that was terrifying everyone, because we have Duel Links as the standard for digital Yu-Gi-Oh play, which at the time, like it's a gacha game, right? And there's no crafting system, not even anything close to Hearthstone and Magic Arena that was available at the time. So that just had people genuinely terrified for where they would go with the crafting system.
I think that was the biggest fear everyone had, because Duel Links specifically is probably one of the most extreme examples out there when it comes to, you know, not having a crafting system whatsoever. Like, oh, you want that card that you don't have? Well, but you're gonna have to pull it. No other way to obtain it. Or like even worse, if it's like a card in Duel Links, there's cards you can only obtain from specific characters during specific events. And it's like, if that event isn't happening right now, that character isn't available. Well, you genuinely can't get the card unless you have some super special ticket that you only get during rare occasions either. Like it's like, Maxi is the best card in the game. Well, you can only get Maxi during the 5th of January or whatever. If any other day you don't have
that would have
Maxi,
been sick.
You know.
Imagine you had to, like, you know, be like first week login in order to obtain Maxi, and then you just never got it again.
The first week you log in, you get 3 Maxis, and then you can't get it for the rest of its existence. Like, but it's always legal.
Yep, exactly. You just paywall it behind something. Thankfully, we didn't I think everyone potentially foresaw that there was going to be something like Duel Links, but thankfully it's nothing close to that. Especially with like time gated cards, because one of the worst examples is that it doesn't actually matter how much money you throw at certain cards in Duel Links. You physically just can't get them. Or at least for a while that was the case. So that's something that people were really scared about. And we talked about all kinds of different things, didn't we? We talked about subscription models.
Yeah, it was the speculations were wild, honestly, especially when they gave us a little bit more with each trailer, right? There was like this one trailer where you could see that there are the resources at the top. I believe it was the crafting points. Like you could see them at the very top, but no one knew exactly what they meant, right? So people were like speculating how they would work and all that kind of stuff. It was, and the same thing was true for the solo mode, the attribute balls, right? At the top, they showed them in one of their trailers early on, and no one knew what it meant.
Oh no, I think people were terrified of that, because Duel Links has like the very similar thing. You have those UR like crystals or whatever, right? And they're basically like either, well, you can't use them for anything really. So people were terrified. But in hindsight, you know, now when you look back, it's like those. It's actually kind of a shame they haven't used those for something, because you actually can't do anything with them. They're
only used to unlock other solo modes, right?
Yeah, it's just this.
It's kind of just like this tool to make sure you play the solo modes in a specific order, or in some order. Like you have to finish this one because you get the things to unlock the other one there, that kind of thing. But they're essentially, they don't really matter. Yeah, you just play one solo mode after the other. You're never gonna need those for anything. Yeah.
Which I think is a shame, because I think like they could have done like a bunch of cool stuff with that. And like just the general PvE solo mode of Master Duel, I think could have like definitely, I think it definitely just has so much potential when you compare it to something like Hearthstone's what are they called? Adventures, I think, or something.
There's like a ton of different game modes in Hearthstone, I think. But we
specifically
were gonna,
the like the PvE ones, right? Like what is it called?
Those are like solo. I think
really
they're also
ones
called like solo adventures or expansions or whatever. I don't know the exact name, but I know what you mean. Like the ones where you play against different characters and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's
Runeterra was out at the time, I think, before Master Duel was released. Does Runeterra have any PvE examples?
It does have PvE, and from what I hear, it is well received. I personally never liked it that much, but that might just be a me issue, because I'm way more interested in the PvP aspect of games, anyways. But it does have that sort of thing, like I think it's called the Path of Champions, where it's got a lot of different solo modes. Yeah.
So in terms of the prelude to Master Duel, it was just wild speculation, and there was like no real information drops happening until suddenly on the 9th of January, I think it was 9 or 19, Master Duel just went live on Steam. It just got
I remember that was just overnight. They didn't announce it whatsoever.
Which in the games industry, if you told people that shadow drops would be like a regular thing like 10 years ago, that would be like, I think it would be kind of crazy. Like, not a lot of games have done that. In recent years, Apex Legends, I think, was the biggest success that I can think of. Just out of nowhere. What is it? EA, I think, are the publisher.
I've never been that much of a gamer, but all the games that I used to play were always announced like a long time in advance. So I've never experienced that kind of thing with a game that I cared about. So
yeah.
It was hype in some ways. I mean, it was kind of hype waking up and being like, wait, is this thing really out?
Yeah, and it's interesting to note because I suppose the only real comparison we have is like other games, which is strange to compare Apex Legends to Yu-Gi-Oh! Although some decks do feel like Apex Legends, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
The way they did that, I think, actually ended up working out well.
Yeah.
It was definitely different, but I think it actually was more positive than had they had like a set release date. And the reason for that as well, I mean, you can see like a lot of companies in the game industry do this. They do shadow drop their game because there's a lot of benefit to it, and it created so much hype. And in terms of statistics, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel was #1 ranked Steam game for like a week.
You would probably know more about that than me because I started streaming around that time, so I didn't have that much of an audience yet. But you told me once that your viewer numbers during the early days or weeks of Master Duel's release were like off the charts. So it must have done something right in terms of the hype it created by just appearing out of nowhere.
I mean, I think like collectively between me, MBT, Kevin, Decade, like the Master Duel section was just like at a consistent like 20k views when all of us were live at the same time. It was crazy. Yeah, it was such a hype moment. And people were very interested in the game, which takes us to, I suppose, kind of the next important discussion point, which is the new player experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is maybe perhaps one of the greatest failures of Master Duel was getting all of these people from years ago who had enjoyed the anime, who'd never heard of Yu-Gi-Oh! For years at this point. They're like, oh, cool, let's try this out. It's been a while. They log in, they play Yu-Gi-Oh! They pick up like this Blue Eyes structure deck or whatever, like some random packs they put together with Maiden. They queue up into ranked, and their opponent goes Alpha, discard, Benten.
That was the first Master Duel competitive format, which certainly did not help. I mean, you could argue that would always be the way, that would always be the case no matter what the current format is, that if someone is completely new to the game or like returning after 10 years or something like that, whatever meta deck you're going to face, even if it's one of the more mid-rangey ones, is going to look completely outrageous to them, right? Because they go like, oh, I'm playing the tutorial, I'm learning how to normal summon. And then your opponent, like, even if it's a mid-range deck like Salamangreat or Orchist or whatever, like they're gonna see like it's gonna seem insane to them either way. But that's a whole different topic. I feel like how Yu-Gi-Oh! In general is very, very overwhelming sometimes. But with Master Duel specifically, my problem is I don't know how well it could have done in like retaining those people that played it in the early weeks or months. Because I remember people like Doom posting these like statistics, right? These Steam usage statistics of like, yeah, we had so many players in the first week and then it dropped significantly after.
That's normal. Like
that's what I'm thinking, right? It's like that's something I feel like happens to every game.
It doesn't matter like how or how good the game is. Every single incredible game that ever gets released will have drop off. It's just natural. The question is like how much can you keep people retained and how much can you gauge and maintain interest in terms of its longevity, which Master Duel has done. The stats are there. Master Duel is still, if you look at like, we don't have all of the statistics because there's multiple different platforms. One of the biggest markets is the Japanese mobile gaming audience, right? Like that's a huge part. We don't have statistics on that. I don't think publicly available. We can just go by Steam, and Master Duel numbers are still surprisingly very strong even today. And you see the jumps in player base and activities during when there's a new set, when there's new packs and stuff coming out. I think that weirdly enough, I think Tier Limit release was the biggest jump that Master Duel had since release. Weirdly enough,
I mean, like, Tier Limits was like it's very polarizing. There's a lot of people that hated it, but there was also a lot of people that really liked it. So I guess that does make a little bit of sense.
Yeah. Talking a little bit more about that new player experience, it's really weird because like we discussed like again, this was back to like the speculation aspect. How were they going to release this game? Would they just give us 10,000 cards all at once, ready to play and be available? Would they follow Duel Links' model, which was a slow bleed of like literal years, like until today? We still don't have all the cards that are currently available in Duel Links, right? Because they've just been slowly releasing like okay, here's Fusion era. Oh, I guess Fusions were in the game at the start, right? Probably. And then there was like, here's Xe, or here's Zexal, or here's Arc V, and then like slowly but surely the game like progressed with the card pool. They didn't do that at all with the with Master Duel, which in hindsight, I don't know, would that have been a good thing? I feel like that would have been kind of bad if they tried to drip feed the game.
I think the main reason why they do that in Duel Links is because Duel Links plays it's a different rule set, right? It's a different game. So cards that are being designed to work in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, it's hard to tell how they, like in the actual trading card game, it's hard to tell how they function in Duel Links, because Duel Links is like half the life points, less zones, skills, less cards in your opening hand, all that kind of stuff. If you just release all the cards in Duel Links, like you have no way to predict what's going to happen. Whereas if you just release all the cards in Master Duel, you know what's going to happen. I mean, it's the same game, right? So like it's going to be the same format almost as in TCG, OCG. So I feel like there was no reason for them to hold back on certain cards.
Yeah, I think that like that's definitely one way. In terms of other ways of engagement, we can talk a little bit about like the different game modes and stuff. I think. Because I think that's maybe one of the best ways that new players could have been introduced and brought into the game, right? Like you could have like a specifically dedicated new player experience where the cards are very low power, similar to what you would have played in the playground, which is kind of what a huge portion of that early Master Duel player base was.
Okay, so why don't we recap the game modes that we have or have had, and maybe compare that to what we maybe would have liked to see, or some suggestions we would have, because I think the things that we do have, you can relatively quickly run it down with. We have a ranked mode that is just, it's best of one regular Yu-Gi-Oh, right? We have a casual mode, which is the same thing but not attached to a rank, but it results in pretty much the same thing, other than probably people taking it a little less serious than they do with the ranked mode. But I don't even know how seriously a lot of people take the actual ranked mode, so I don't know how different casual even is from the actual ranked mode. And then you have the solo mode, which is a bunch of tutorials paired up with how do you call it, a lot of lore thingies about like different archetypes. You get like they tell you the story behind a couple of different archetypes, and you get some gems, but it's like not, I don't know. I'm not doing the solo. I personally don't play the solo modes that much. I don't know. Do you always keep up with them?
Mostly, yeah. It's primarily for cosmetics, I think, at this point. You get like lore-related avatars and borders.
Oh yeah,
I
remember having done one or two for like a specific board or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it, right?
I mean, we do have events, right? You have events. That's the one thing I want to lead to. I think that's the for someone who is relatively new to the game, or not really familiar with the power level of modern Yu-Gi-Oh and all that kind of stuff. Events, in theory, are a fine way to play the game, because the way events work is they just say, okay, we have specific rule sets for this specific event. Like we're going to say, oh, you can only use fusion monsters, or you can only use exceeds, or you can only use theory types, or whatever they've had. I don't remember every single one, and it's just like they make a separate ban list as well for these. And obviously not every event is the same level of fun as another, but there've been a couple where I've thoroughly enjoyed like messing with lower power strategies, just because, you know, they would ban almost all the super meta relevant stuff. Like I remember one that I thought was very fun was the NNR festival, where you were only allowed to use N and R rarity cards, which N is basically common, rare is rare, which are very easy to obtain, and most of the high power level cards are not N or R, so like you'd have to really get thinking on what you're going to play in that format.
I don't know why, but it's such a pet peeve of mine that they called it normal instead of common.
Yeah,
like,
same.
Why would we? Why would we differentiate?
They copied it from Duel Links. Duel Links, I think, does it the same way, and it's the exact same. You have Ns, Rs, super rares, and ultra rares. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but I do agree. It bothers me as well. Yeah.
Another thing that came, I don't think it wasn't on release, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but team battles are a thing in Master Duel, and they're actually very like, what's the word? They're fleshed out. Like they have like a system in place.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't know that was a thing.
There's no shot the world champion doesn't know
I
that
have never
Master Duel has an
done that.
entire game mode.
I have not done that. No.
This is you discovering that there's another game mode in Master Duel.
Yeah, I didn't know about it.
Well, I mean, I guess that goes to show just how not well advertised and pushed it is. Imagine they had a team battle event, for example. That'd be really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess if you don't know, there's a team battle thing. You can I don't know if you could actually pre-queue with a bunch of friends or
oh, you can't even team battle with your friends?
I'm sure you can. I'm very sure you can. But I think like you'd have to like make a room and create a team battle room.
Okay.
But I think like, well, basically like what I've been doing for content and is anyways, like you can random queue, and you just get thrown into a team. And
Okay.
by the way, it's not rank based. So you can you can be paired against like a bronze or like a master player. And it's like the amount of content that I've gotten on stream from it is really fun. I don't know why I haven't compiled it into a video yet. I need to get on that. But it's really hilarious. Like,
okay, but hear me out.
Just, like...
Hear me out. I see how that is good for like YouTube content, but for especially when we're talking about like newer players and stuff, that seems very frustrating of a concept.
So
that
I think
does
the
not
reason
seem
for
fleshed out as you called it.
But that's the thing. The problem with it is I think there isn't enough people queuing because it's like 50% of the time.
Yeah, they can't make it rank based because they don't have enough. Yeah, okay.
So 50% of the time when you queue, it generally just times out the queue. It just says, I don't know what the error message is. It just says like queue unavailable or something. Like it just like you just get like the loading thing and there's no one's playing. Like the only reason I even get people playing is because I'm streaming and people try and snipe Farfa because haha, it's funny, right? Like, but if I'm not streaming it and I go join team battle, like there's genuinely like a coin flip if someone will be playing the game. It's actually crazy.
This might just be an issue of them not really pushing for alternate game modes, right? And I know this is one of your arguments when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so complicated and all that. One of your main arguments is always they should make different ways to play Yu-Gi-Oh!, right? Or like alternative ways to play the game, and even the events I feel like don't really cut it here because they're all really timed, right? There's like it's a weekly thing, and even if you really liked one certain event, you can play it for 1 week and then it's done, or 2 weeks, whatever it is. It's not like a permanent thing, right? And I would love for it to have different game modes that you could just like regularly play, you know, like that's why I don't like the fact that it's so detached from the actual TCG or OCG formats, because I would love to have like Time Wizard lobbies as well, like for example, right? How like Hearthstone, for example, has what is it called, Classic, where you can play some of the old cards that they even like changed because they were too powerful or something like that. Like you can really play the boomer formats pretty much. And I would do that. I would play an Edison like lobby in Master Duel every once in a while, right?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest issues is when you have a game that's been around for as long as Yu-Gi-Oh! And is as big as Yu-Gi-Oh! And has such an extensive card pool, there's genuinely millions of different ways to play that. And we've seen it through things like NR Festival. We've seen it with things like the Burn Festival, the 30-second Festival, completely different game rules, which totally change how you look at like what is essentially like pack filler. Like suddenly DDD Leonidas is meta, Firecracker is meta, right? Like, so this is like different ways to do this and to play the game. But I think one of the major things that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has going for it is because it's been around so long, there's so many cards. And the content is already there. But by proxy of the fact that there's no set rotation and there's no officialized Time Wizard in game, Yu-Gi-Oh! Cannibalizes itself so much. By just creating and releasing new cards constantly, you're basically telling people, hey, you have to play this specific current game mode and there's nothing else for you to do, right? Whereas they don't really need to do anything special. There's lots of like backwards compatibility.
I've said it a couple times that I don't really understand why we don't have multiple game modes, because from my perspective, all it would really take is like 1 or 2 separate game modes that people enjoy, and people would be spending hella crafting points on those kind of cards, right? Because like you still have a lot of cards from back in the day that are all like ultras or super rares, right? And if I want to play an Edison format deck, there still is a bunch of cards from these archetypes that are ultra rares, and they, in return, they would just be making, I feel like, more with the game if they had alternate game modes that people cared about.
Yeah, absolutely. Me and MBT played Edison once on Master Duel, like ages ago, and I had to craft like ultra rare gold sarts.
I crafted like I spent like $20 because you said BA was better than Necros, and we played BA versus Necros on Master Duel.
Yeah, and then it's unfortunate because we didn't even get to play it out. Like the servers were down or something, so we never actually got to see what.
Yeah,
the best
after
deck
like
was,
five games that you lost, somehow
no,
the
no, we
servers.
couldn't. We couldn't play. Like I don't know what was going
Oh,
on with
yeah,
the
I
game at the
forgot.
time.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah. So the game modes thing, I think, from a game developer perspective, it's always a case of weighing up cost versus returns. And I suppose for whatever reason, they don't feel the the R&D, the quality assurance, the development time involved with building legacy formats is not worth the potential returns in the future. That's what they must see as the reason for why they don't do this.
Maybe.
Or
I'm not sure if I like, from my perspective, it doesn't seem that complicated to enable just a different mode with a separate forbidden and limited list restriction, because that's really all that it would be. It might just be an issue of when it comes to the game is already complicated, and it's already, I feel like, as someone who, it's hard for me to put myself into the position, but I'm trying to put myself into the situation of someone who returns to the game for the first time in a long time. Sure, ranked mode is complicated, but maybe they think it gets even more complicated if you even have different modes to choose from.
That's maybe one of the more esoteric reasons, right? Like other than raw returns and profits, it could be, multiple different aspects. Like, okay, well, now we're splitting our player base. Now we are, taking away from potential profits and returns on the modern format, which is constantly churning out new cards.
True. Yeah, I guess if you establish someone as like, hey, I play Master Duel for the old stuff, right? They get like a deck once for an old format that doesn't really change anymore, and it's probably very hard to
make more money from them.
Yeah, to turn them into a competitive modern player, because once they're happy with their Time Wizard format deck on Master Duel, they can just jam that forever, pretty much. That might be a genuine reason. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially. But yeah, I think in terms of suggestions and feedback, I think there's lots of other ways to address this, right? Like they could essentially cycle through the entire game's history. They could have like a ranked mode of 1999 OCG, and then you just go like, okay, next season it's 2000 and 2001, and right, and then you're going to have to craft those cards anyway, and there would probably be a viable player base for that amount. But again, it just comes down to, is the development time of a system like this worth it in terms of the potential returns when they have these costs? So it's
but that's what I mean.
What it all comes down to.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say I don't like the fact that it's so completely detached from the physical card games, right? Because it's not even and I guess this is a good segue into like the separate card pool that it has, because if you think that thought through, right, you're like, okay, they could say, hey, we're gonna play 2005 OCG format or something like that, right? At some point in the future, they're gonna be like, let's say it's 2030, and they're gonna be like, we want to go back to 2022 format, right? What format do you pick? Do you pick TCG, OCG, or Master Duel? Because Master Duel is as well a different format from both of the others, right? So I feel like it's a
Do you want to play Time Wizard 2020 Master Duel format with me? Eldritch Sun versus Drytron?
At some point, maybe people would want to, but because Master Duel basically is its completely own entity, they just, it doesn't feel like they actually acknowledged even the existence of the physical card games, neither TCG or OCG.
Yeah, you're right. So, but the main thing here is that the potential is there. It's available for anyone that wants to try it or get their hands into it. They just need to create a framework and system in place to be able to actually let people play it. But will they do that? I don't know. We'll see. I feel like they have to get some kind of other game mode rolling at some point, right? But then again, it's been 2 years now, so maybe not. Maybe they're happy with how it's going.
So to me, it feels like, and I still remember the amount of time I used to cope on, hey, when they release Master Duel, different card pool, different forbidden and limited lists slightly. The amount of times I coped on, like, oh, it's just gonna take them a little bit more time. They released it as like an unfinished sort of product, and They will eventually make it so we can play the TCG or the OCG as 2 separate game modes. I'm kind of over that copium. I've kind of made my peace with the fact that it seems like they want Master Duel to be its own thing for whatever reason. I personally still think it would be better if it was the same as at least the OCG, because I think it's always better if you have your two player bases united, right? I always notice it when I stream. It's like some people are interested in Master Duel, some people are interested in the TCG, some people are interested in both, but there's definitely a lot of people that are not, that are either digital or physical players. And it feels just like something that splits the community for no apparent reason.
Which I think, like, maybe potentially to some extent, that's how they see as one of the problems with catching up their card pool, which we can talk about a little bit later, actually. But I think one of the main reasons there is, if you make Master Duel the same format currently today as OCG, for example, maybe what they perceive happens is a lot of their physical players just quit playing paper and they just become digital players. Maybe that's like something they see as a risk by running the games together alongside one another.
It's an argument I've heard a couple times, although I don't know how much it would actually hold up, because I mean, even if the card pool was the same and the Forbidden and Limited list was the same, you still would be playing a different game because it'd be best of 1 instead of best of 3. And on top of that, I feel like there's so many other card games that have these kind of things, right? I know Pokemon has an online simulator, and to my knowledge is the exact same as the physical card game.
Yeah. I don't know what the deal is with the Pokemon simulator and its popularity. From what I've heard, people just constantly complain about, oh, it's terrible, it's not good, and it's like,
I think that's just a matter of every community, no matter what, is always complaining about something. People are very good at finding something to complain about.
Yeah, I mean, I tried it. It seemed fine. Like,
I've played it in the past, but like,
yeah, I didn't think it was incredible. You know, it's not Master Duel.
It was definitely the kind of thing where before Master Duel even existed, it was something that I looked at and I was like, I wish we had it for Yu-Gi-Oh, right? So like, it might have its own set of problems. They might be unhappy with certain things about it, but I'm sure that at the end of the day, they are happy they have it, right? Like, better than nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly, I think, is what the what the most important thing is, right?
Yeah.
So one other final thing about game modes that I definitely think is really important to talk about, because Magic has draft modes, Hearthstone has arena, and I think like Yu-Gi-Oh has never fully truly explored draft as a competitive game mode outside of like what, a couple of YCSs.
It was the battle pack YCSs, but I genuinely think that would have been such a dope way to include it in Master Duel, because we can't really sugarcoat it. Modern Yu-Gi-Oh sets are not made for draft. You cannot draft with Yu-Gi-Oh packs unless they were to make a product like the battle pack, which apparently they tried, and I'm assuming it didn't do as well as other Yu-Gi-Oh sets, so they just decided to not do it anymore, which in physical, reasonable. In this game digitally, it wouldn't cost you that much. I feel like, I mean, you'd have to think about, hey, how is this game mode supposed to work, all that kind of stuff. But I'm pretty sure that could have been a very, very successful game mode. And even if it worked like a Hearthstone arena run, where you have to spend some currency on entering, right, the game mode, right, in order to play it, which is their way of, I guess, turning it into some sort of profit. I think that could work. Like, I see no reason why people wouldn't want to play that, especially the kind of people that are newer to the game, maybe overwhelmed by the current power level. And it feels like a mistake to me to just not offer anything to the people that are overwhelmed by modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Because the alternative is, if they don't see a different way to play the game, they're probably not going to play it at all.
Yep, I completely agree. I think if people have ever looked at like Hearthstone Arena, like, it's so clean. Like, you spend like, what is it, like 100 gold to enter, and then you get 3 cards that pop up, you pick one, 3 cards pop up, you pick one, and then you go from there, you create and draft a deck, and then you queue up against people who are on a similar record to you. And then I think like, if you get 7 total games, if you win at least like 3, you break even on your entry or something like that.
It's like you play until you lose 3 times or reach 12 wins. And then everything above, I think everything above 7 wins, you make back your entry plus some more. And everything over like 3 or 4 wins, you make back your entry but equal in like packs or something like that.
Yeah, so for anyone who would play that, there's always going to be some type of like reward if you're competent at the game modes, right? And I think it would just be, regardless of the monetization and the details and the ins and outs of that type of aspect, just in terms of like, I think the fun aspect, I think can't be denied, right? So many people like drafting, they like cubing,
Yeah.
and I think it's, Yu-Gi-Oh! Again, like going back to what we were talking about earlier, when Yu-Gi-Oh! Has such a massive, huge, diverse card pool of 12,000 cards at this stage,
Yeah.
it's very limiting how many of those cards are actually playable at any one time because there is only one current format to play the game.
Yeah.
And
there are a lot of cards out there that are good standalone cards that would definitely see play in like a draft sort of format, but they simply don't see play in modern Yu-Gi-Oh anymore because modern Yu-Gi-Oh isn't really that much about like, oh, good standalone cards. It's way more about archetypes interacting with each other, multiple cards, like, it's kind of like the sum of its parts is more than, the individual things, and like you don't really get to see those kind of cards anymore these days, which would be I think a great way also to introduce just newer players in general.
I think one of my favorite examples to give with this kind of thing is the card Psychic End Laser, or Psychic Eraser Laser. For anyone who doesn't know, Psychic Eraser Laser is basically, I think, like you declare a card or something, a card name, and then your opponent like sends one. It basically acts as like a weird like spell kaiju. It's a really good card. It's actually decent. But the problem is when you have a massive card pool like Yu-Gi-Oh! And there's no set rotation, you're just going to have better versions of those cards, right? Like it's just the simple fact of why would you ever play Lightning Vortex when you have Raigeki, right? So in a format that has like draft, for example, if you pull something like Lightning Vortex or Localized Tornado, I think that's the Destroy Special Summon ones, or Psychic Racer Laser, like those become really good cards that you can pick up in the draft and you can put in your deck. But currently, as it stands today, you would just never consider those cards. They're fine, they're not bad, but like you just have better alternatives.
Yeah. I think I'd be very interested, and this is the sad part, is that we genuinely don't have the reasoning behind these decisions to not make that happen, right? Maybe, who knows, maybe it's in the works, maybe it's not, maybe they have the reasonings not to do it. It'd just be really interesting to know, because from my perspective, it's always like I always think about these things and I can't really come up with convincing reasons not to do it.
Yeah. I think, again, it might be the cynic in me, but I just feel like it has to just be essentially a cost versus return.
Which would be fair enough, right? I mean, it's a company at the end of the day. But then at the same time, even when I think about it that way, I feel like there has to be a way how that is profitable for your game, if you just do it right.
I guess, it would just have to be like, will there be enough people playing Draft and Master Duel if it existed for the next X number of months before we break even on the development time and costs? And then will it lead to bleeding out our current player base, right? Because I feel like is a genuine risk. I might be completely wrong, but I feel like as a company, they probably look at something like like a new game mode, and they're scared that they might make something that takes away from their current from the current game modes that are available.
So yeah, because the way we're looking at it is we're looking at it like, or I'm looking at it as a way to get new players to join the actual game, right? Because it would be like step 1, learn the rules. Step 2, instead of immediately going into rank mode, you dabble around with some draft, and then step 3, maybe go into competitive. But what you're saying is like it might just work the other way around, where people who are currently, playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh would end up maybe enjoying the simpler draft mode way more, and as a result you lose those from the main game, and maybe they spend less on the side. Yeah, okay.
So like think about how many people, I'm sure people in chat can clarify or verify or not, but how many people have you guys noticed that when you go to YCSs now, the people who used to enter the main events, they don't care anymore. They enter the side events. They go to the Time Wizard formats and stuff, right? And in the end, that's still like revenue being generated. But in terms of like the card pool, the products that are being, sold on the shelves, once you buy like an Edison deck, that's it. Like you're kind of basically set for life. That format isn't going to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's compared to like a current player, you're going to have to keep picking up new cards. You're going to have to keep picking up like the new deck, the new set,
Yeah.
etc., etc., right? Like, so you are a long-term customer, whereas something like Time Wizard and draft players, they might not be as much.
I still think it's a net positive for them because there's also an equal, if not greater, amount of people that go to YCSs only because these tournaments exist. They wouldn't even go if it weren't for that. I know a lot of people personally that played back in the day, stopped playing eventually, and are now just coming back because of Time Wizard, and might even find their way into the actual game. Like, it's possible they would. And there's still money to be made from certain reprint sets. That reprinting Edison cards is something that they are doing, right? There's a good Edison reprint every once in a while in a set that certainly helps. But yeah, it might be a matter of the people being the. It's not always about what the reality would be if it happened. It's also just about what the company thinks could happen, right? And if they think it's not profitable, then we'll probably never find out because they just won't do it.
Let's move on to talking about one of the other methods of Master Duel, which is the obtaining of cards. And Master Duel has a currency system called gems. It is basically the only way in which you can gain your cards or gain packs, and then packs lead to cards. And if those cards, if you don't like them, you have a crafting system in place. So in terms of obtaining the cards themselves, let's first talk about gems. I think overall, I would say that this has been a massive success. I think something like the subscription model, the Duel Links model that people were talking about pre-release of Master Duel, I think the fact that they didn't go with those is probably for the best.
So we have talked about how, in general, managing and mismanaging expectations a lot, and I think this is the one case where it's been an overwhelmingly, like, they've exceeded the expectations, I think, in this one, right? Whereas, like, other things they may not have done as we expected them or wanted them, this one was definitely way better than what we expected. And I honestly, I think Master Duel's monetization system is fair. I feel fair. I feel like it's fair, especially for people that don't want to keep up with every single new deck, right? A lot of it obviously is front loaded in terms of the gems you get in the beginning, right? Which is good that way, right? You get a lot of I feel like if you ever would be frustrated with not being able to get a certain card, it would be way down the line if you're already into the game, right? But in the beginning, you get a lot of gems, a lot of free resources. I mean, I haven't started a new account in a long time, but I definitely have in the past, and it just feels like you can almost make a full deck in a matter of, I don't know, almost even your first day or your first week, definitely.
As someone who's done a lot of different challenge modes and stuff like that, I can tell you 100% it is the easiest, simplest thing to build a full meta deck straight off the bat in day one, if you're smart with your gems. But the problem is, of course, the new players aren't. That's the problem. Because, naturally, you play a solo mode. Okay, we're gonna do like what's the really bad one that you start with? Element Saber? And then it asks you, do you want to go to the store? And then it's like, you click yes.
Did you like that? You like that? Yeah, go get it.
Did you enjoy this Element Saver gameplay? Okay, cool. And then you go and you spend like, you buy like 20 packs of Element Saber packs, right? And now
it's a smart technique because it's technically not their fault then that you are bad with managing their resources, right? It's not their system that's at fault in that case, right? They're like, well, we gave you all those gems. It's not my fault that you spent them all on Element Sabers. Now you go and buy more to get the actually good deck, right? Well, yeah, it's still a lot better than not giving you those resources at all. And but even the initial, like the first, let's say, boost, the starting bonus that you get from the amount of gems, I feel like even as someone who has exhausted those initial resources, has a couple meta decks, and then tries to keep up with the game, how do you feel like it works out for those kind of people if they want to stay free to play? Like, is it something that is possible free to play to keep up with the game, or is it something that you're going to have huge troubles with?
I think without a doubt, for anyone who plays Master Duel regularly, if you keep on top of the festivals and the events, as long as you're not crafting like a full new meta deck like every like week or something, it's very possible to have gone completely free to play, meta to meta to meta to meta. I think like very infrequently you would have ever had to spend any money. Now, obviously, you're gonna have to be dismantling a lot of old stuff.
That is true.
But
that is one of the main reasons why I haven't been able to go completely F2P is because I'm the kind of person, I look at a card and I remember the times that I used to play that card, and I'm always in my head, I'm like, oh, what if I ever want to go back to playing this or that deck from like a year ago, and I don't want to dismantle it, right? And that is one thing that keeps me from doing it. Another thing that keeps me from doing it completely F2P is that as a content creator, I want to keep playing every single new deck, which I believe that might lead to some problems if you actually have like if you always want to stay on top, like, oh, they released Vanadium now, I want to have Vanadium and I want to have Super Heavy Samurai, I want to play those decks, which in reality is not necessary, to be completely honest with you. Like as someone who's playing a lot of different decks, it is 100% possible to reach like the pinnacle of regular ranked mode, which is Master 1, with decks from even like as far as like a year ago. It's like you're not actually forced to play with the newest kind of stuff, the decks, unless you're talking like, which we're gonna talk about in a little bit, like unless you're talking like highest competitive level, like trying to top a duelist cup or something like that, right?
I think for the average competitive player, which it's hard to really tell just how much of a percentage that does actually make up the player base, because I think from stats on something like, I want to say like a League of Legends, if you're even like in gold, I think that puts you in like maybe like top 10% of the player base or something, which gold Omega LOL sounds awful, but like
I mean, it's fair though. Yeah, it's like you always, no matter what you do, you will always underestimate the amount of people that play the game just on a much more casual level than you do. Without that being an insult whatsoever, it's completely fine. But it's just the number is so much bigger at the lower ranks. I feel like it's very hard to imagine from our perspective, but it is that way.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're someone who is just like grinding casually, you just want to check out a new meta deck like when it's ever released. If you're smart with your gems, and you aren't like absolutely, trying to build competitive Ogdodic every week or something like that, you're gonna be like absolutely free to play, and that's fine. So I think that's one of the best things of Master Duel is for anyone who has been keeping up. You're gonna be completely okay. But that's unfortunate of a reality for anyone who doesn't want to play, or people who do enjoy playing multiple decks. And I think that's one of the sort of biggest negatives, which for anyone here who does spend a decent amount of money on Master Duel, and who has experience, unlike the content creators or the whales or whatever, if you want to build a new deck, the drop off in return is massive. Like the diminishing returns is huge. You can spend like it's like £50, £60 for like the max gem bundle, which is like, I think like 40 packs or something, 50 packs, and an unlucky streak in ultra rares, like that is genuinely not enough to build like some decks from scratch. The drop off is horrendous.
It feels and it's a weird argument to make, but it feels especially bad because the game is like relatively generous with what it gives you, right? With the amount of gems it gives you. Looking at the
paradox.
Looking at the price of buying those gems instead of like, I don't know, grinding one event for a day, it makes me feel really bad whenever I actually have to spend gems because I don't know, I want to play this deck on stream tomorrow. I have to get those cards now. I can't wait for the next event. But freaking those gems that I'm paying, like, I don't know how much it is exactly, but $50 is like, that's one day during an event that I would have to just play to get those gems for free. And I genuinely sometimes have this feeling where I would be willing to spend more. I would be more willing to spend money on Master Duel if the gems were a little cheaper in relation to what you get out of them, right?
Yeah, so
I remember Emre had to spend like $400 for his Exo Sister deck at Worlds.
That's sounds like particularly bad as well, because that's another thing though, because he did that at a time where they didn't have their own pack.
Yeah,
right?
no, that was
So
it
that's a
was the
really egregious
worst
example.
possible situation. It was like Exo Sister has a criminal amount of ultra rares because it's like two or three of the extra deck monsters. You need multiples of each. Martha is an ultra rare. Pax is an ultra rare. They did not have their own secret pack. Like, he was doomed. It was absolutely doomed.
Yeah, I think they've started to address that recently by keeping those selection packs around, or at least releasing the secret packs with their corresponding monsters quite quickly. But like, for example, like Exorcist, specifically for the context of people to understand, when there's a new pack, it's a selection pack filled with other archetypes, and you can just spend 10 gems, pull from that pack, and you can potentially get like half of your Ultras or Exorcister cards. The problem with what happened with Emery, and what a lot of people struggle with sometimes, depending on what archetype you have, is those selection packs are only available for like 40 days or whatever. After that 40-day cutoff mark, if you want to build Exorcister at the time, you had no way to obtain Exorcister except by crafting. So you had to open just some random dud
Yeah, you might as
pack.
well just open freaking master packs.
Yeah, you just open master packs, which, what's the percentage chance of pulling an ultra rare plus of the percentage chance of it being an Exorcister?
I mean,
So
it's
you just
basically you have to pull 3 times as many packs, because the conversion rate when you have to craft, like, dismantle other cards and craft other cards, is 1 to 3, because an ultra rare costs you 30 crafting points, and if you dismantle an ultra rare, barring any glossies or royals, you get 10. So you have to like pull 3 random ultras to create 1 ultra that you want. So basically it triples the price as opposed to pulling the cards that you actually need.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that should be about it for the obtaining cards. I do want to talk a little bit about the crafting system in general. I think that the crafting, like, again, overall, I think most of this has been a massive W, especially with our fears in the lead up to Master Duel. I think overall it's been very good if you're smart with your gems. The crafting system is very good. One thing I would have liked to have seen is for one currency, which might be very greedy, but basically, the ability to like dust your supers, and then craft like an ultra from that would be really, really good. Like,
I mean,
if you could
we know why they didn't do that though, because essentially, basically, I think they set from their perspective. Obviously, they wanted to make it more generous than Duel Links, but they didn't want to go too far because they do want to be making some money. And if you could dismantle a lot of your rares or commons or super rares to make all your ultra rares, then obviously people would be less incentivized to spend money. So at that point, they apparently, from their perspective, you're asking too much right now.
Probably. But like, the way it works in like Hearthstone, for example, like they have like 3 rarity systems. You have like common, rare, epic, legendary. Like, in theory, if you dismantle enough common cards, you can craft a legendary. Like, in theory, you could do that. In Yu-Gi-Oh, would that work? Potentially, but obviously, like, to make it profitable, they would have to tune down the conversion
It would depend on the
so
conversion
much.
rates, obviously. Like, you'd have to have like rares only give you like 1 crafting point, and you need to have like 1,000 to make a super rare or something like that, But yeah.
But it's like this weird spot that I think many players are in at this stage of the game, where if you've been buying a lot, and you dismantle extra cards that you don't need, I'm capping on common crafting points now.
I mean, it's legitimately you have infinite. Yeah, you legit have infinite. You never look at that number ever again.
Yeah,
like it's irrelevant.
Which
and
feels
there's a lot of
odd.
things like that. Another thing that you have infinite of is the freaking cards from the legacy packs or whatever they're called that you can't dismantle.
Which is odd, right? Because you'd think like, it just feels weird to look at a currency and to look at it and think like, yes, I can't do anything with this. Which, to be fair, Duel Links players are very used to.
I mean,
like,
dude, you have like 5 of these in Duel Links, like different things that you don't care about anymore after like 1 week.
What is it, like gold or something in Duel Links is
you
useless,
have like
or at least
gold, you have these kind of thingies that the attribute thingies, you have all kinds of things that you just never need ever.
I think, like, I'm not exaggerating. I think I have like 1 million, like, gold or something in Duel Links, and like, there's nothing I can do with it. Like,
Farfa's a millionaire. You can stop subscribing to Farfa on Twitch.
So it's a really bizarre thing, I think, but it's a minor gripe. I think overall, we can say like the
Yeah,
crafting system is really good.
it genuinely the whole system is more positive than negative overall. It's only
Yeah,
small things. You can always ask for more, right? Like at the end of the day, it's a company that's trying to make money. So what we're doing is like we're asking them to take less money from us to get
yeah,
more things, right? Which is like at a certain point, you just have to ask yourself, are you happy with how it is? And I think overall, with what it could have been, I'm okay with it, right? I'm okay with it. Couple things like I would have loved to be able to generate royals or glossies without having to basically
this is exactly what I
yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
ask about.
yeah.
I think it'd be really cool if you could, instead of like crafting an ultra, you could like use 6 or 60 ultra crafting points, and you could craft a royal rare, for example, just double
Hmm.
the cost or triple the cost, whatever the
Yeah,
amount is. Because the way it works now, if you want to get a royal rare, it's like a 1% chance,
yeah.
which is um like, imagine, so it costs 30 dust of ultra to get one ultra rare, and then that craft is 1%.
Yeah,
Um and by the way, there are whales out there who have like full royal decks. So I think like the maths on that is maybe like, I want to say, I think it's like $10,000-$15,000 to craft like a full royal rare deck, depending on how many holos there are. But
yeah.
yeah,
But just the fact that these people
it
exist
exists.
tells you why they do it like that.
I mean, yeah, they were the ones like who I saw. I think it was like Billy or something. What is it? The Chinese YouTube thing. I think it was like on release. Some guy like fully royaled out Eldritch, which was like, well, that's a deck
That's a
that I
criminal
would.
offense in some states.
That's yeah, that's capital. Um, it's rough.
You know
But yeah,
why I mainly care about it is it just bothers me if I have one royal in a playset and they don't look the same.
well, that's such an impossibly sad problem to have, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But the thing is, I feel like it would be like profitable, right? Because the way it works now is like, the average person, I hope, like most normal people, they're just like, okay, well, a royal is just something that's a freak accident that is going to happen whenever, right? And
yeah.
I'm just never going to get that, right? But some people, if it was actually deterministic, might think like, okay, well, you know what? I actually really, really fucking like I don't know, Sword Soul.
Yep.
I'm gonna craft a royal Cheng Ying, right?
Yep.
And then they actually spend money to get the gems required to get, because they know that if they just put in like 3 ultras worth of gems into it,
Yep.
they can just get an ultra. So they could make money that way,
Yeah, so the
potentially.
average player right now, and I think this is true, the average player right now spends $0 on royaling out their deck because everyone knows it's just outrageously hard to obtain a royal. Like no one actually in their right mind does that. For ultra rares especially. Like for super rares, I've never spent money to obtain a royal super rare, but I've been there where I'm sitting there with a thousand super rare crafting points, don't really have anything I need them on, so I just craft a couple super rares and see if I get a royal. And if yes, cool. If no, then cool. But either way, I'm also not spending money for that. But it seems to be a case of the couple people that do actually go for it, they make up for all of that, right? To them, apparently, it seems more worth to have like one person go for a full royal deck with the current system rather than having, I don't know, 1,000 people go for it with a more fair system, right?
Mm,
Because a
potentially,
couple
yeah,
whales
exactly.
just make them so much money that they don't care about making it available to everybody.
Exactly. Which I think like could work with a secondary royal rare, or I guess it
Hmm.
would be a completely different. Like, so for example, I keep referring to Hearthstone a lot, but it's like the closest comparison I have. You can get like animated card art in Hearthstone. So imagine you could get like royal rare, but it was like blue or like some sort of like space green, and the artwork was like animated. Like
Okay.
that would be something that you could maybe spend your gems on
So you're
deterministically,
just saying give
or
me more rarities. So one
yeah,
of
yeah.
them
So
is
you
exclusive to whales and one of them is just like something
exactly.
that anyone can obtain. Okay, so yeah, I
Yeah,
see.
so aesthetics aside, you could have one rarity where it's like, okay, the only way you will ever get this is freak chance. That's fine.
Yeah.
But you could also have like something a little bit cooler, right? Because I
Hmm.
think like glossies, for example, like does anyone really care or notice that? I
No,
feel
I'm
like that's a
annoyed by them
really
for the
wasted.
same reason as if I craft a playset, one of them is glossy. I hate that. Like I'm annoyed by that.
Yeah. I don't even think they're nice. Like I know like sometimes people like crafting glossy commons and rares because we just have like infinite common and
Yeah,
rare
I do
crafting
that.
points.
That I do. But for
Yeah.
example, if I have like 2 copies of a card that you only play one of, One of them is glossy, one is regular. I will get rid of the glossy because it gives me more crafting materials.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I'll keep royals because they look nice. They're special.
Yeah.
The glossy ones, I'll get rid of them for the 5 extra crafting points. I don't need them. Like, I don't need them. They're not that good. If it's like an ultra rare that I have another version of anyways, like I'll get rid of the glossy to get more crafting points. And stream is always mad at me if I do that. Like, I don't know why.
Yeah, especially if it's like mismatching rarity, right? Like I just rather have like the standard.
Yeah, no, then I'm actually bothered by it.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about the separate card pool and ban lists. I hope you're still with us. This is now the 1 hour mark of the podcast. So as we mentioned from feedback, we'll be trying to go for an hour and a half plus per week.
Haven't we talked about
really
separate card pool and ban lists as well already?
No. Well, we touched on it, but we didn't dedicate a lot to it. So yeah, like one of the biggest gripes of Master Duel that people have is that there is a separate card pool. There is a TCG card pool, there is a OCG card pool, and there is a Master Duel one and separate ban lists. And I'm genuinely like, I feel like if you ask someone like, tell me what all of the Pearly limitations are in all of those 3 formats, go. Like, do you know? Like, it's hard to keep track of this. You know what I mean?
No, I'm trying to think of it. Okay, so Pearly, the white cat, is semi-limited in Master Duel. The black rank 2 exceed Noir is not out in Master Duel yet.
Oh, and you have to track releases as well.
Yeah. No, I give up. So, no, I genuinely I give up.
So basically, that's a big issue, right? Especially for people who do like following the game in multiple different regions. I think I don't see what the benefit is. Like, again, it sort of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where you could risk taking away potential paper players by making them all digital. Like, but for me personally, if I had the ability to play test and practice on Master Duel and then go to locals with the exact deck list that I've been grinding on, I would love that.
It is my biggest gripe with the game to this day. Like I've said earlier that I've made my peace with it, but I still am sad about it, about the fact that I cannot play the same game online, because I like Master Duel. I like streaming Master Duel. I love the game. It's great for stream content, and it's still at the end of the day, I think it's the same. It is the same game. It's Yu-Gi-Oh, right? I can teach people how to play Yu-Gi-Oh no matter if it's the TCG format or if it's the Master Duel format. I'm fine with it. I've made my peace, but still, I would love for it to be a simulator for the TCG format or the OCG format. I don't care. I find it very cool to be able to log on and play OCG for a day, right? Just to see what it's like. But I can't do that either.
For a lot of players and potential missed opportunities, like I can say, like potential, like specifically my friend group, like all of my competitive testing circle friends that I've tried to improve at the game with and TCG and stuff, they played Master Duel. They kind of messed around for like a little bit, and they've just been like, well, this is useless. I can't practice for YCSs with this. I can't, like, what am I supposed to do with this, right? Like, that's it. Like, all of them quit the game. Not like, I think Jordan might be the only guy who like still plays Master Duel like occasionally, and that's it. Like Darren, Raf, like they uninstalled that game like months ago, right? Like because it's just it's a great game, it's fine, but a lot of people come into Yu-Gi-Oh because they like the social aspect, they like going out, hanging out with friends, going to YCSs, traveling, and Master Duel doesn't translate the gameplay part of that. So what does it really offer you?
Yeah, it's just a matter of, hey, you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player. Do you want to play another game that is very similar as well, right? And that's another thing that it is hard to keep up with both games at the same time because they're so different. It's a lot of work to keep up with Yu-Gi-Oh, period, like the TCG, already. And now you're being asked to, hey, do you also want to keep up with this other game? Do you also want to spend money on this other game that it resembles the same game, but it's not quite the same, right? And it's like, for some people the answer is yes, but for a lot of people the answer is no. They don't have the time, or they don't want to put the effort in to another game that is not going to benefit them in their primary. Because even if you play both games, I feel like one of them is always going to be your primary game that you care about more, and the other one just kind of takes time away from that a little bit.
Yeah, it's about, we only have a finite amount of time and resources as a human, and what you choose to dedicate that with is your prerogative. And some people from what I've seen, at least from coming from a TCG background, they saw that Master Duel was not giving them the TCG experience that they would hope that it would be, and so the alternative is to play a 15-year-old flash game or something, right? Like, what else can you do, right? It is what it is.
It's just a matter of they, for some reason, and I genuinely don't know the reason. I would love to hear the reason once again. For some reason, they've decided to completely separate physical Yu-Gi-Oh from the digital game. They've just made a different game, and that was their decision. I feel like at this point we can stop coping about them ever. In the first couple of months, I was like, yeah, surely at some point they're gonna catch up with the card pool. They just wanted to release it and see how it goes. Like, it felt like they released it in kind of like a beta state, and eventually we're going to get there. I feel like at this point we have to accept the fact that we might not ever get the TCG or the OCG format on Master Duel. Am I still going to play Master Duel? Yeah, I will. I still enjoy Master Duel. It doesn't really take that away from me, but still I could potentially enjoy it more, is what I'm always thinking about.
If we take a big, huge drag of the copium really quick and just think about this for a second, right? Like, just really inhale that copium. One thing that does give some amount of cope is the fact that Promethean Princess is a Master Duel card. And Vanquish Soul was released with Jiaolong on release, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So if we take a big deep breath, like, that maybe potentially sets up like hope for the future, right? Because it is crazy to think about. Like,
for context, one argument that's always been made, or one rumor that's always been spread, is that for some reason they cannot release the cards within a certain time frame after their physical release, because there has to be a certain time until they release the cards in digital form, because they're afraid otherwise it would ruin like the IRL card sales, right? And so what you're saying is Promethean Princess sets this kind of precedence that cards can be released even prior to their TCG or OCG release.
I think it's it's not even so, like, Princess, you could probably make the excuse that it's like, oh yeah, this was just like a random one-off experiment they did. They're gonna make a Master Duel card and then make it into a real card. But the Jiaolong is specifically what is like
you're on massive copium one right now. I'm
like,
just letting you know.
I'm telling you, like, Jiaolong is the copium one, because that's not like a unique special experiment. That's just a random Agov card that they released before any other Agov cards for some reason.
Okay, I'm going to destroy your copium. The only reason they released Jiaolong together with Vanquish Soul, like with the initial wave, is because it would have been unplayable without, and they wanted to make money on Vanquish Soul.
Haven't we already had, like, we'll explain Rescue Ace then, right? Like, that deck is unplayable because there isn't, what is it, Emergency?
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Yeah. I guess they haven't made that decision for Rescue Ace, yeah.
Yeah, so it's really bizarre, because it looks like they're willing to do it for one deck but not another. And if anything, like, don't you make more money long term, because they release Rescue Ace, the pack runs out, then the new card comes out, Emergency, and now it's like, well, if you didn't pick up Rescue Ace initially, now you have to retrospectively go back and what? Do you have to do like the Emery situation where you have to build Rescue Ace from scratch? Situation. Like, do we need an Emre incident or something, like, to retrospectively build Rescue Ace, right? Because I think that's what happens now for anyone who just doesn't have Rescue Ace now.
Yeah.
When they release Emergency, the deck becomes top tier, and then, oh no, I
think they just need to mix. They just need to mix their practices, because if they always do it like this, people are not going to like that in the long term, right? You can maybe they're trying to juice the Rescue Ace enjoyers, but they're not going to juice the Vanquish Soul enjoyers, because you can't juice everybody, otherwise people are going to leave eventually.
Too much juice is what you're saying.
Yeah, okay. They're juicing too much.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've tried to like play devil's advocate a lot and try and think of like what is the logic and reason with it. I assume it's like different markets is good because more potential streams of revenue. I think like
I think they're just gonna. I think they're detaching it as their own thing, because they're now completely separate entities. If one does well and the other one doesn't, they are completely like they're very separate from each other. They have different ban lists as well. So like if something goes horribly wrong in the OCG, they know it's coming for Master Duel, and they can be like, okay, we're gonna prepare for that in this or that way. It's gonna feel different for you guys. Don't worry about it. You're not gonna face this overly powerful deck in both formats at the same time, or something like that, right? It might also be a matter of that if you have a problem with, I don't know, players being frustrated with a certain deck or a certain card, that there's like an outlet that they can go to that feels different from the other format. That is one positive about it. Like trying to find one of the positives here. If I ever feel frustrated with one of the two games, I can go and play the other, right? If there's ever a time where there's nothing exciting happening in the TCG, I can go and play Master Duel and it feels different. And then if I notice, hey, Super Heavy Samurai is the best deck in Master Duel right now, I can turn off the app as fast as possible, and I can go play the physical card game where Super Heavy Samurai is already not a thing anymore, right? So that's one of the positives, I suppose.
Yeah, like for me personally, as soon as Magic Dragon left the TCG, I was like, all right, cool. Well, I guess I'm just a Master Duel player now. You know,
well,
I'm just gonna say it now. Dude. It's like they came for Block Dragon and I didn't speak out, right? And now Block Dragon's
you
gone in Master
spoke
Duel.
out.
That's they came for Magic Dragon.
You just lied to my face. You did you just say you were quiet about Block Dragon?
You have been the victim of a trick.
No, you've been caught.
So it's really weird. I don't know what it is. Like I can't wait to do our deep dive on combo decks. But it's really weird how like my iconic favorite cards in Yu-Gi-Oh, like Block Dragon, Magic Dragon, they just both got hit now in Master Duel. It just made me like so.
It
sad.
really makes you think, huh?
Yeah, maybe
really
maybe
makes
there's
you
a
think.
problem there. There's
you
no
are
correlation.
the problem, I think.
There is no correlation here. So yeah, I don't know what there else to really say about this is. I suppose the feedback is I would just like to play both formats, right? Like
I mean, I think what it comes down to is we have to accept the fact that Master Duel is a different game, and that is okay. It was just mainly a matter for me of mismanaged expectations because I didn't expect it to be a different game. And that's why I was disappointed, right? Had they from the get-go said, hey, this is going to be another way to play Yu-Gi-Oh, another game, different format, I would have checked it out with a different mindset. I would have gone into it expecting something different, and maybe I would have been completely happy about it. And I think at this point we have to give up the copium that it's ever going to give us the TCG format as like a simulator, because I don't think it's I don't think that's what we will get from it. I think at this point the only copium that we have is that maybe Konami Europe or Konami NA will give us a separate thingy to have an official sort of simulator, because I think that sort of thing is possible potentially, but I don't know if it's ever going to happen. But that would be like that's my bigger hope.
You mean like a separate client?
I feel like it's more realistic at this point that like Konami TCG says we need a TCG simulator, so we're gonna make one. I think that's more likely than Master Duel ever turning into it, is what I'm trying to say.
Man, X Steven is shaking right now. No one tell him what Josh just said.
Even though I said that's more realistic, I still think the chance for that is very much like very low, or I don't know anything in terms of how likely that would be.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the competitive aspect of Master Duel.
Yeah, that's me.
Master Duel. So there is the World Championship that you can qualify through
healthy ways.
Very healthy methods.
Yes.
And I don't want to deep dive too much into this because I think we'll do a specific one for that at some point, maybe closer to the time. But I want to talk about like the sort of average competitive experience on Master Duel. Currently, it is a ranked ladder that gets you up to Master 1. And that's basically it.
That's it, yes.
And I'm wondering just how many people actually do it. Because I did it once, and I just didn't really feel like there was a gain for it. Because the difference between Master 5...
You did it once?
Yeah, because there's no point. You get 2 packs. That's it.
I mean, yeah, but that's not what competition is about, is it?
Well, it's just like, okay, so I think
you just don't have that grind set, do you?
Maybe, yeah. But the thing is, there isn't. You need some incentive, right? Like that's the thing.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Like it's one of the things that feels not finished about the product is that we don't have a quote-unquote ladder system where you can eventually compare yourself to others, which is something that literally every single online game that I've ever played, especially the card game ones, have that. Like you have like this sort of ranked ladder where you climb up the ranks and eventually you reach the highest ranks, and then you get to compare yourself with others by some sort of elo a system where you collect points and you get like you can get rank 1 in the world or whatever like that, right? That sort of things is like, especially as something that's marketed as an esport, the fact that it doesn't have that is just mind blowing to me. Like that's that, right?
I think Yu-Gi-Oh has this like very almost bizarre identity crisis where it's like we are a competitive esport game, but we are also a children's card game,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't want to encourage like unhealthy competition. So it's just this weird
Explain
paradox.
72-hour world championship qualifiers then.
Yeah, it's bizarre because it feels like it's sort of stuck between these two identities, and I feel like they just really like. I mean, we've seen this in TCG, right? With like the prize support for YCSs, for
Yeah.
example, right? Like I think they kind of just have to sort of double down and be like, okay,
Yeah.
we have an aging player base. Like this is not a children's card game
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
You know, for example, just look at the damage step, and just sort of accept that that's kind of where your audience is at today, right? Like we are millennials who grew up with the game, and that's sort of your main player base,
Yeah.
right? So I think like introducing that competitive aspect is fine.
Yeah.
I think Distant has been the most vocal with regards to the ELO system on Master One. I think it'd be really fun. I think it would definitely incentivize a reason to play the game super competitively. Because right now, personally, my Master Duel gameplay involves just playing really stupid decks at like the plat level and just seeing what other nonsense is going on down there. Like I just think that's more funny.
Yeah. I mean, I don't do it the same way. I do climb to Master 1. At least I try to every month. I just do it on stream. It's like one of the things I do on stream, you know, reaching Master 1 for the month. It doesn't feel like it's anything that special though. For a competitive nature like me, it's like, in terms of what it is, it's like the bare minimum of competitive play they could have given us, right? And the same is also true for the duelist cups or the world championship in general. Like, yeah, I was very happy that there was a world championship, obviously, and then but then the duelist cups, on the other hand, is something that they don't incentivize even me to really play it, even though those are one way to get like first in the world, right? For a duelist cup, they offer that. It's just that this thing happening like only like 3 times or 4 times a year, and you have to play 72 hours straight. It's just not something that I personally enjoy that much. I did it once for the World Championship qualifier because that was some actual stuff on the line, and that one actually was something that I, even though it was stressful, I enjoyed that kind of thing because it felt like something you would actually, you know, fight for, something you would compete for, a spot at the World Championship. Like, that felt worth it to me, and it was very rewarding. Whereas like if I would sit down and play 72 hours just to have like an icon on my screen, I don't know if I would feel the same way about it.
It's bizarre because there is just enough players who are willing to do that, oddly enough, you know?
Yeah, people are doing it. Yeah, and even that goes to show how much it would how well received it would be if you could do it like on a monthly basis, on like for like a season kind of thing, right? And even if only a couple thousand out of the, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people that play Master Duel would actually partake in like a Master ELO ladder, right? I think it's also about the image that it would portray to everyone else, right? Because people would see like these streams on Twitch of like trying to reach rank 1 in Yu-Gi-Oh, that kind of thing. It would actually portray the game as this kind of competitive esports environment, rather than kick W, go to Master 1, rank up game to Master 1 is against like, I don't know, I don't want to insult any specific community, but that kind of deck, right? And it's not really that at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's as well as at this stage of the season, it's weird because like Master One is actually not that impressive. There's just a lot of variance on the way up there. It's
especially because once you do it, you get reset to like what is it, Diamond 5, so it's not even that far for the next season.
Yeah, exactly. I think the thing with Master One, it's like it's more of a time thing. You just like if you are good, you will get Master One. You just have to throw enough games at it. I think is like the issue. So having like an ELO system and a ladder, I think would be really cool. Now I don't know if I completely agree with having it linked towards the World Championship. I think it probably would be like the best case scenario.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be that. That's not what I meant. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. So overall, I think the experience competitively on Master Duel gives you the it whets the appetite enough, I think, for the average player. I think if you are competitive and you are good at the game, like it is a semi-fun experience to get through the Master 1 cycle. But there's not enough sort of tertiary support for it, I feel like. Like we have
they have made one big step towards that, which is making for the first year, for last year's World Championship, there was one qualifier and one qualifier only, where all the people came from that qualified. For this year's upcoming World Championship, it's different because every single Duelist Cup, the first place in the world, now gets an invite to the World Championship, which is it only matters for one person at the end of the tournament. But I think as far as to how much the tournaments actually matter to people beforehand, it makes a huge difference, because I saw a lot of people grind these year's Duelist Cups that would not care about last year's, right? That was a big difference for sure.
Do you think the point system incentivized like a lot more dedication from?
I think people? So too. I mean, just look at the amount of people that streamed like their Duelist Cup runs as opposed to last year's Duelist Cup runs. I feel like it wasn't really a thing last year to just go like, hey, I'm gonna grind this Duelist Cup and like stream my run or something like that. It's something that's definitely popped up a lot more since they've introduced a spot at the World Championship for it.
Yeah, I think it's it's a great viewing experience as well, right? Because even if you don't play, I think it's like still an entertaining part of the game.
Yeah, that's the one thing I noticed about the one that I did. It was something that I expected it to not be that good of a stream, because my plan was I'm just going to go in there, I'm going to have a delay so people can't snipe my hands. I'm just going to play for almost 72 hours straight. I'm not going to talk because that's going to be exhausting if I do. And I want to focus on my games as much as possible, right? So I literally sat there in silence grinding for, it was like 64 hours out of 72 hours. And like those streams popped off because people just liked the competitive aspect of the game so much, right? And like the people that watched me were not all competitive players, but even people that are not super competitive themselves enjoy watching competitive content, right? Competition happen. And that's why I feel like the more we would have, the more we could get, the better it would be for attracting other people to the game as well, because people would maybe watch someone grind to Legend 1 or whatever you would call it, or a King of Games rank 1 in the world or something like that, and that would maybe get them into the game because they're like, hey, this game has a really cool competitive system every month and I want to see if I can join, right?
Yeah, and just not even at the highest level, I think there's like so many ways that they can improve the competitive aspect of the game. Because we do have like Challenger Cups, for example, but even like the team battle thing that we talked about earlier, like that is such a like criminally underused tool to the point that the world champion of your game doesn't know it exists. Like that's something went wrong there.
Hey, my bad. I don't know. Maybe I've heard of it before and just forgot.
But like that's a genuinely like concerning thing. Like the fact that a system like that is in place.
I mean, it's, on the other hand, though, as a counter argument, it's okay for more casual game modes to exist that don't interest me as a hyper competitive player. But there may be a lot of people out there that do know that one exists, and maybe
no. But that's the thing, though. They don't. We don't need to tie anything crazy to it. But like, you know, maybe like a decent amount of gems.
Fair.
To like a team battle or something like that, right?
There would be ways to incentivize people to look at it that they currently are not in place, right? If there was a decent amount of gems in it, I probably would have heard of it and probably would do it every month to get those gems. Yeah, that's fair. But I do want to give a shout out to the Challenger Cups, the ones that you just mentioned, which depending on where you're watching or listening from, they are only available to Europe. It's an effort of Konami Europe to bring some more competitive play to Master Duel. And to me, that's been a blessing, honestly, because the way it works is they're all a bunch of free tournaments to enter, different sizes, but completely free to enter. Some are 64 players, 128, 256, even big ones. What was the biggest one you hosted, like 2048?
Yeah, but I think overall the actual real attendance was only like 1,200.
Okay, they didn't. Okay, but still 1,200 people. I mean, hey.
Yeah.
And they're all completely free, and the pricing gets better the bigger there are. And they're being hosted in cooperation with like content creators that commentate them and all that kind of stuff. And it really creates this sort of almost like a competitive environment aspect for the game in Europe that actually makes it really fun, because it feels like the smaller ones are kind of like your regular locals because they happen a lot, like almost every week. You have multiple of them, right? So it feels like this kind of local environment that you can go to on a very regular basis. And then you have bigger ones that happen every other month or every other week that feel more like regionals or bigger even, right? And they even have this sort of point system implemented where you can collect points, and towards the end of the season, there's like a final that people get invited to that have enough points and all that kind of stuff. And it just feels like an entire competitive environment that they created for Master Duel in Europe that really changes a lot.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been almost an hour and a half, and I think we've covered so many aspects of Master Duel. I feel like there's even so much more we could have talked about, honestly. Like,
but Farfa needs to go to locals.
We didn't talk about legacy packs. We didn't talk about like the actual selection packs, for example. The UI, the interface, the database, like things like that. Like these are absolutely things that we could have elaborated on.
Yeah.
But I suppose they're about as more minor aspects. So real quick, what would be your number one implementation for Master Duel tomorrow, if you could?
I mean, I would just give it TCG format. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's the thing that annoys me the most is that I can't test for the TCG. Yeah.
It's a tough one for me because it's between TCG format and it's Time Wizard. I would.
I thought you were gonna say the
love
draft mode. That's why I didn't say it. But okay.
Just all of them. Everyone's saying ban
Okay.
Maxi. Like
what would be your one change? Yeah, I would do everything that we just talked about.
Yeah, I saw. I can't say that, unfortunately. Everyone is saying ban Maxi in the chat, by the way. Like,
I thought you were gonna say bring back Block Dragon for a second.
Yeah, that would be good as well.
Yeah, kill the game.
And make Maxi a rock as well.
Make Maxi a rock. Okay. All right. This is going to be it for today's podcast. I think this is a good time to,
I just realized, but we should have actually just had a subsection on Maxi. Like, I think that's worth a discussion. But anyway,
I think that's worth an entire freaking podcast, probably.
Yeah, we could stick that in the combo one. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for watching. Again, your feedback is much appreciated during these early times.
Yes.
I didn't have enough to go through the questions. Hopefully, we will maybe potentially set up a Patreon for this. So if you want to support, check that out soon, quote unquote. And that's probably where we'll get Patreon related questions at the end of every episode. We'll dedicate like 50 minutes or so to that. Next week's episode, I think we should probably do a Phantom Nightmare deep dive, especially with, by the time you hear this, there will be Ashen cards revealed. We'll know rarities. So it's probably worth doing a TCG deep dive for next episode. Yep. That's the plan going forward. So follow us on all the various forms of social media, keep up to date, etc., with wherever you are listening, Spotify, YouTube, or potentially Apple. Thanks for tuning in. And,
all right, thank you for listening, and we'll hear each other next week. Bye, everybody.